It started with a sentence no one expected to hear inside Amazon MGM studios. "She's not welcome here. She's a traitor." The words sliced through the private conference room like a blade. And they came from the rising director Hollywood thought would be Meghan Markle's next big creative ally, Jason Orley. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. A director known for his easygoing nature. A creative who rarely speaks ill of anyone. A filmmaker who avoids drama the way most people avoid traffic on the 405. So why did he say it? And why now? What could Meghan Markle possibly have done that pushed him to publicly distance himself, professionally and personally, at a moment when she was desperately trying to rebuild her Hollywood reputation? These are the questions everyone has been whispering. And yet, no one is prepared for the real story. But let's back up for a moment. Let's walk into the building where this entire disaster began. Imagine the polished glass doors of Amazon MGM studios reflecting back the bright Los Angeles sunlight. Executives in tailored jackets glide through the lobby. Assistants clutch coffee orders. Writers stare at their phones rehearsing pitches. It's a place full of energy, talent, pressure, dreams, egos, and secrets. And into that world, Meghan Markle stepped, ready to reclaim the Hollywood throne she believed she had left behind for something bigger. Except this time, Hollywood wasn't rolling out a red carpet. It was watching her with caution, waiting to see what she'd do, wondering whether working with her would be a gamble or a catastrophe. Because in Hollywood, reputations are currency, and Meghan's currency had been fluctuating like a stock after a scandal. But even with the cautious whispers and skeptical glances, there were still a few creatives willing to give her a shot. One of them was Jason Orley, a smart, sharp, up-and-coming director with a reputation for being collaborative, flexible, and fiercely loyal to his team. He wasn't known for drama. He wasn't known for making enemies. And he definitely wasn't known for burning bridges, which is why his reaction shocked everyone. But before we get to that explosion, before the moment he reportedly told executives she could never step foot inside the studio again, you need the full context. Because what happened wasn't a single incident. It wasn't one bad meeting. It wasn't one awkward email. This was a chain reaction, a buildup, a slow burn turning into a wildfire. And the spark started long before Meghan even arrived on the Amazon MGM lot. The first signal came quietly. A leaked message here, a frustrated assistant there. An uncomfortable conversation between Meghan and a creative partner. A project timeline that kept shifting. A demand list that grew longer every week. Little things, small things, things Hollywood usually ignores. Until one day, they stopped being small. It was during this period, the uncertain, uneasy lead-up to Meghan's involvement, that Jason Orley first heard whispers. Nothing concrete, just murmurs. She's intense. She doesn't compromise. She always thinks someone's out to get her. She rewrites scripts without permission. She has to control every detail. But Hollywood is built on rumors. And Jason wasn't someone who let rumors guide him. He believed in giving people a chance. Besides, working with Meghan Markle wasn't just another collaboration. It was an opportunity for publicity, for reach, for impact. Or at least, that's what the studio hoped. So Jason prepared for meetings. He reviewed Meghan's creative ideas. He assembled documents, pitch decks, outlines. He approached the partnership professionally, ready to meet her halfway. But something happened the moment Meghan walked into the room. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't even obvious. It was just off. A subtle tension. A shift in energy. The kind of heaviness that tells you the universe is bracing for impact. And Jason felt it instantly. But he didn't say anything. He didn't react. He didn't assume anything. Because creatives have off days. Celebrities have moods. Studios have pressure. He stayed calm. He stayed patient. He stayed professional. At least, he tried to. However, in Hollywood, nothing stays quiet for long. Behind the scenes, conversations started shifting. Studio executives questioned Meghan's intentions. Some wondered whether she was joining for the project or for something else entirely. Others questioned how much control she wanted. And then came the first real warning sign. Meghan allegedly began acting like a producer on a project she wasn't yet formally attached to. Emails allegedly went out under her name assigning tasks to people who didn't report to her. Assistants were instructed to reformat scripts she hadn't been given approval to alter. Scheduling requests appeared out of nowhere, demanding studio staff accommodate Meghan's preferences before negotiations were even finalized. People whispered. People observed. People waited. Jason tried to stay neutral. Tried to assume the behavior was just confusion. Tried to believe Meghan simply misunderstood how Amazon MGM handles creative partnerships. But the mistake wasn't a one-time thing. It repeated, twice, then 3 times, then became normal. And suddenly, everyone in the building began walking on eggshells. Because in Hollywood, you never know when a misstep will snowball into a feud or a headline. But the real turning point didn't happen in an email. It happened in a private conversation. A brief, tense interaction between Jason and Meghan that insiders say made the director question her motives entirely. What did she say? Why did it shake him? Why did he walk out of the room looking like every dream he had for the project had just been crushed by one sentence? That's the part no one has fully heard yet. But before we get there, before the confrontation, before the fallout, before the doors were metaphorically and literally closed, you need to understand something deeper. This wasn't just a creative clash. This wasn't just a personality mismatch. This wasn't just a disagreement about direction or scripts or scheduling. This was personal. Because according to insiders, Meghan said something or revealed something that Jason interpreted not just as disrespectful, but as fundamentally disloyal. A breach of trust, a sign that she wasn't there to collaborate. She was there to manipulate. And that's when the word traitor first entered the conversation. Not publicly, not in a scream, not in a meltdown. Quietly, in a closed-door meeting. A meeting where Jason allegedly said, "She's betraying everything we agreed on." Harsh. Maybe. But Jason is not someone known for dramatics. Which means something significant had to have happened. Something enough to change how he saw her. Not as a collaborator, but as a threat. And from that moment, everything spiraled. Executives began reconsidering the partnership. Assistants whispered about unseen tension. Writers dreaded receiving notes from Meghan. Jason tried, and failed, to keep the project stable. Meanwhile, Meghan, according to insiders, believed everything was going perfectly. She thought she was winning them over. She thought she was establishing dominance. She thought her influence was growing. Until she discovered it wasn't. Not even close. Because someone inside Amazon MGM leaked information. Someone shared details. Someone exposed something Meghan never intended anyone to know. And when Jason found out, when he saw the full picture, when he heard things Meghan said that she never intended him to hear, that's when the relationship collapsed entirely. That's when he made the call. That's when he told the studio. That's when he said the words that shook the building. She's not welcome here. She's a traitor. But what exactly did he find out? What was in that leak? Who exposed her? Why did Amazon MGM side with Jason instead of Meghan? And most importantly, why did the entire studio quietly, silently, unanimously agree? This is where the story shifts. This is where the unraveling begins. This is where the calm ends and the chaos starts. Because the truth behind Jason Orley severing ties with Meghan Markle isn't just one explosive moment. It's layers of conflict, layers of betrayal, layers of secrets, misunderstandings, manipulations, and revelations. And Chapter 1 begins with the first piece of evidence that changed everything. An email Meghan Markle never expected anyone outside her inner circle to read. But what was in that email? And why did it destroy the entire partnership in a single blow? That's where we go next. IT began with a single subject line. Not a dramatic one. Not one that hinted at disaster. Just 5 plain, boring words. Regarding tomorrow's meeting agenda. Harmless. Normal. Routine. But inside that email, hidden between the lines, buried under polite wording and corporate phrasing, was the first undeniable sign that something was deeply wrong between Meghan Markle and Amazon MGM Studios. And Jason Orley saw it instantly. But here's the wild part. The email wasn't even sent to him. It was forwarded, quietly, secretly, by someone inside the studio who felt uneasy. And when Jason opened it, he immediately felt the same thing. You ever read a message and instantly sense the writer wants power they haven't been given? You ever read words that feel soft on the outside but sharp on the inside? That was this email. It didn't shout. It whispered. But the whisper was loaded. And those whispers travel faster than any scream in Hollywood. Now, let's rewind for a second. Because this email didn't appear out of nowhere. It was a response, meaning Meghan had already sent something first. Meaning she already believed she had the authority to direct Amazon MGM's staff. Except she didn't. She wasn't confirmed. She wasn't approved. She wasn't attached. Not officially. Not contractually. Not creatively. She wasn't the boss. But in her own mind, she already was. The original message, the one Meghan sent, included requests that didn't feel like requests. And Amazon MGM staff felt uncomfortable enough that someone quietly slid it to Jason like a warning note in the middle of a burning building. What was so alarming about this harmless-looking email? Why did it hit Jason like a punch he didn't expect? Let's break it down. Because the details matter. The very first line Meghan wrote wasn't a greeting. It wasn't, "Hi team, hope you're well." It wasn't even Meghan Markle here. It was a directive. Please apply the following adjustments before tomorrow's creative session. Apply. Not consider. Apply. That one word already set the tone. And the adjustments? They weren't light tweaks. They weren't simple preferences. They were rewrites. Full rewrites. Meghan asked the writing team to restructure scenes, redesign character motivations, alter backstory foundations, and shift the emotional tone of the entire project. And this might have been fine if she were the director, or the producer, or even officially on the project. But she wasn't. Not yet. She wasn't even in the approval pipeline. But in her mind, she was already running the room. And here's where it gets worse. Meghan added a line that made Jason sit upright in his chair when he read it. Jason will confirm the changes during the meeting. Jason will confirm. As if she were speaking for him. As if he had already signed off. As if he didn't have authority. She did. You could almost hear the studio staff exhaling awkwardly in the room where they first read it. Some laughed nervously. Others held their breath. Because in Hollywood, you don't speak for a director unless they ask you to. And Jason never did. But Meghan didn't stop there. She added something else, something subtle, but devastating in implications. A list of instructions that sounded eerily like someone trying to pre-stage control over the meeting. Please arrange the seating accordingly. I'll need the head position. Please ensure the board materials reflect my updated guidance. Please distribute my creative notes beforehand. Head position. Her updated guidance. Her creative notes. You could almost feel the air tighten. Because Meghan wasn't acting like a collaborator. She was acting like a studio executive. Except the executives didn't authorize her. Jason didn't authorize her. No one did. And yet, she stepped into the space as if authority was hers by default. Now, here's where the story takes a sharp twist. Because Jason didn't get angry when he first read those lines. He wasn't insulted. Not yet. He was confused. He thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Meghan was referencing a conversation he didn't remember. Maybe someone told her she had more creative involvement than she actually did. But then he read the final paragraph of the email, the part that caused the person who forwarded it to include a quiet message above it. Thought you should see this. The paragraph was short, direct, and icy. If these updates are not implemented before tomorrow's session, I'll need to reconsider my time commitment to this project. There it was. The line that changed everything. Because Meghan was leveraging something that didn't exist. She threatened to withdraw from a project she wasn't officially part of. She positioned herself as indispensable before she was even included. And Jason realized something in that moment. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This was strategy. A power play. The kind only a seasoned celebrity would attempt, assuming everyone else would fold under pressure. But the biggest shock wasn't even in that paragraph. It came from the CC line. Meghan had copied people she shouldn't have copied. She looped in high-level executives, producers not associated with the meeting, assistants who normally weren't included in creative conversations, even one person from marketing, someone totally irrelevant to script development. It was calculated. Meghan wanted an audience. She wanted people to see her asserting control. She wanted witnesses. She wanted to broadcast authority she didn't yet possess. It wasn't just a power move. It was a territorial claim. And the moment Jason realized this, something heavy settled in his chest. Because Hollywood loves confidence, but it hates premature control. Confidence, appreciated. Ambition, respected. Dominance, tolerated only when earned. But overtaking a meeting you weren't approved for? Deadly mistake. Still, Jason tried to approach it with logic. He took a breath. He reread the email. He told himself not to overreact. He forwarded it to a trusted producer and asked a simple question. Am I reading this wrong? The producer responded instantly. No, you're reading it exactly right. And that was the moment Jason's stomach dropped. Because now it wasn't just him. Now someone else saw it too. Now it was real. But the story doesn't stop there. Because the email was only the final straw of a buildup that had been brewing silently. And here's something most people don't know. This email wasn't even the first sign of trouble. But it was the one that made Jason pay attention. Because the tone was too bold, too direct, too presumptuous, too familiar. As if Meghan had used this strategy before. As if she knew exactly how to force a room to reorient itself around her. As if she expected people to never push back. And yet, for all the audacity in that email, something else stood out. Something darker. Something subtle. There was a sentence buried in the middle. A sentence many readers skimmed over. But to Jason, it stuck out like a siren. We can't risk delays or miscommunications at this stage. At this stage. That phrase bothered him. Because they weren't at any stage. There wasn't a stage yet. They hadn't finalized anything. They were still in exploratory talks. The project wasn't even greenlit. So why was Meghan writing as if everything was already official? Why was she behaving as though she had been given power she hadn't? Unless someone else had told her she had more authority than she actually did. Unless she misunderstood an internal conversation. Unless she believed she had leverage. Or unless, and this was the possibility that Jason dreaded, she was creating the illusion of authority on purpose. To force MGM's hand. To pressure executives into accepting her involvement. To corner Jason into validating her leadership role. Because once an email like that goes out, copied to executives, assistants, and random departments, it's hard to walk it back. Everyone sees it. Everyone assumes she has status. Everyone reacts. And when people react, pressure forms. Jason recognized this immediately. Because he'd seen the tactic before. A-list actors do it. Seasoned producers do it. Industry veterans with decades of reputation do it. But Meghan Markle? Someone trying to rebuild herself in Hollywood? This was bold. But here's where the emotional twist hits. Jason wasn't angry. He wasn't insulted. He wasn't even thinking about the project. He was thinking about something completely different. Trust. If Meghan would do this before she was formally attached, what would she do once she was? That was the moment everything shifted for him. The moment excitement turned into suspicion. The moment possibility turned into risk. The moment collaboration turned into caution. Because Jason realized he wasn't dealing with a partner. He was dealing with a wild card. The email ended with 2 words. More soon. More decisions. More demands. More directives. And Jason knew he had to make a choice. To either accept the tone Meghan was setting. Or push back before things spiraled. And unfortunately for Meghan, someone else in the building made that decision for him. Because hours after that email circulated, another message surfaced. A hidden one. A private one. One Meghan never thought Jason would see. And what it contained shook everything. It wasn't a directive. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a complaint. It was something far more dangerous. Something personal. Something that made Jason feel betrayed before he even confronted her. And that secret message, the one buried in a forwarded thread, is the real reason the partnership collapsed. But what exactly was in it? Who sent it? And why did it make Jason accuse Meghan of being a traitor? What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. They say every Hollywood disaster has a beginning. But the beginning of this one wasn't an argument. It wasn't a leaked message. It wasn't even a creative disagreement. It was a moment on set so strange, so uncomfortable, so telling, that the crew who witnessed it still rolls their eyes when Meghan Markle's name comes up. It started with one sound. Not a scream. Not an explosion. Not a collapsing set piece. Just silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence that fell over the room like a curtain. The kind that tells you something is happening that everyone wants to avoid, but no one can look away from. And in the center of that silence stood Meghan Markle, trying to take control of a set that didn't belong to her. Now picture the scene. A bustling studio room. Camera crews checking lighting levels. Production assistants juggling clipboards and water bottles. Writers whispering over last-minute adjustments. Jason Orley at the front, doing what directors do, keeping everything running smoothly. Then the door opened, and Meghan walked in like she owned the building. Some celebrities walk in quietly, blending into the chaos. Others stroll in confidently without needing to prove anything. But Meghan? She walked in like a queen entering her throne room. Head up, back straight, eyes scanning the room with a mixture of entitlement and expectation. And that alone made the room shift. Because everyone knew she wasn't officially part of the project. Not approved, not confirmed, not greenlit. She was supposed to be observing, listening, learning the tone and direction. But Meghan didn't observe. She acted. She stepped forward, right past the assistants, right past the writers, right past the camera crew, and planted herself directly in front of the storyboards, the ones Jason and his team had spent weeks preparing. And without asking permission, she moved them, literally moved them, shifted them around, rearranged the order, placed one board on a separate easel, pulled down another, and set it on a chair as if it were irrelevant. Imagine spending weeks crafting a narrative flow only for someone who isn't part of the project to walk in and shuffle it like a deck of cards. Jason watched her for a full 10 seconds, frozen, confused, trying to determine whether this was real or some kind of bizarre test. But Meghan wasn't testing anything. She was asserting dominance. And then, the moment that truly made the room tense, she clapped her hands. Once. Sharp. Commanding. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Let's start from the beginning, she said. Not a suggestion, not a question, a command. The room held its breath. One writer glanced at another, eyes wide. An assistant instinctively took a step back. Someone near the lighting grip muttered under their breath, "Oh no," because everyone in the room recognized what was happening. Meghan was trying to run the set, a set she had no authority over. And Jason, the actual director, was standing 6 feet away in stunned silence. Now here's the part that still gets whispered about. Jason didn't react immediately. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't correct her. He didn't confront her. He simply watched, studied, observed, analyzed. Because Jason Orley is calm by nature, measured. He doesn't explode when presented with chaos. He steps back and tries to understand it. But Meghan didn't give him time to understand anything. She turned to the writing team and began critiquing board number 4. This motivation isn't clear, she said. This transition feels weak. This scene should be centered on the emotional arc, not the plot. We need more internal conflict here. The writers blinked, because none of this came from the script. Meghan hadn't read the full version. She didn't know the structure. Her comments weren't based on story logic. They were based on what she wanted the project to become, not what it was. And when she turned to the wardrobe assistant, who was literally there only to check continuity for test shots, Meghan said something that made several crew members nearly choke. When we shoot this, she said, I'll need options that look more authoritative, preferably dark fabrics, fitted, clean lines. Nothing too soft. The wardrobe assistant slowly raised a hand. We're not dressing you, she said gently. This is for... Meghan cut her off. I'm aware, she said. But I need to be prepared for anything. Prepared for anything. A cryptic phrase. A phrase that made no sense. A phrase that implied she was planning something the rest of the room didn't know about. That was the moment Jason stepped forward. Not angrily. Not aggressively. Just firmly. Meghan, he said, this is a prep session. We're not shooting anything today. Meghan turned slowly, as if surprised he had spoken. Oh, she said lightly. I assumed we were doing a full run-through. No, Jason replied. It's a development session. A conversation. Not production. You could feel the room exhale, relieved that someone, anyone, had addressed the chaos. But Meghan's reaction wasn't relief. It was irritation. A subtle, quiet irritation that flashed in her eyes for a split second before she masked it with a smile. Well, she said, if it's development, I need to give input on the direction. No, Jason said again, calmly. Not yet. Those 2 words, not yet, hung in the air. Meghan didn't like them. Her smile dimmed. Her posture stiffened. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't the center of the room. Jason was. And everyone was watching her response. That's when she made a mistake. A big one. She stepped closer to Jason, too close, and said in a low voice that several people still remember clearly. If we're doing this together, you don't get to shut me out. Together. That word hit everyone like a sudden alarm. Because they weren't together. They weren't partnered. They weren't approved collaborators. Jason blinked. Meghan, he said, nothing is finalized. She paused. And then she scoffed. Actually scoffed. Jason, she said, I think we both know it's final. They wouldn't waste my time otherwise. And that sentence, that single sentence, shifted the entire energy in the room. Because it implied something dangerous. That Meghan knew something Jason didn't. That executives promised her something behind his back. That she believed she was already above him in the creative hierarchy. Someone whispered, "Oh, that's not good." Another quietly slid their phone out, pretending to check messages, but clearly recording mental notes for later gossip. Even Jason's expression changed. Not anger, confusion. Because if Meghan was telling the truth, that meant Amazon MGM had been discussing decisions without him. If she was lying, it meant she was trying to manipulate the room into bowing to her authority. Either way, it was a problem. But before he could respond, something happened that made the entire room shift from uncomfortable to stunned. Meghan walked to the center of the floor, the literal directing space, and began giving stage directions to actors who weren't even present. She gestured with her hands. She paced. She spoke aloud, mapping imaginary movements. And she did it with complete confidence. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Like she expected the room to follow her lead. Like she believed the set needed her guidance more than the actual directors. Jason stepped forward again. Meghan, he said, louder this time. This isn't appropriate. She didn't stop. Meghan, he repeated, you need to stand down. She looked at him over her shoulder and said something that made one assistant gasp out loud. I know what this story needs better than you. That was it. That was the moment. You could feel it. The shift. The turning point. The instant Jason realized this wasn't going to work. Not because Meghan had opinions. Not because she had creative ideas. Not because she was passionate. He loved passionate collaborators. What he couldn't work with was someone who didn't respect boundaries. Someone who treated a project like a monarchy. Someone who didn't care about the team's work. Someone who thought she could walk into any room and instantly become the highest-ranking person in it. Meghan finally paused when she noticed no one else was participating. Not the writers. Not the assistants. Not the camera team. Everyone was standing formally, waiting for Jason's lead, not hers. And that realization didn't sit well with her. Her expression tightened. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes narrowed. She tried to regain control by shifting the tone. Okay, she said brightly. Let's all collaborate. Let's try what I suggested, and then we can compare both versions. No one moved. Not one person. Because everyone knew that if they followed her lead even once, she would take it as evidence that she had authority. And then she did something that changed everything. She turned to Jason and said as if settling a debate no one else heard. They already told me I could take charge. A lie? A manipulation? A misunderstanding? Jason didn't know. But the crew exchanged looks that said everything. If she was lying, it was reckless. If she wasn't lying, it was explosive. Jason's voice dropped, quiet and controlled. Who told you that? Meghan's smile faltered. Just for a second. The first crack in the armor. I don't need to justify my conversations, she said. You do, Jason answered. When they contradict studio protocol. The tension was volcanic. Then, the moment that sealed the incident in Hollywood whispers forever, Meghan pointed to the storyboards she rearranged and said, "These stay in my order." Jason stepped in front of her. Firm. Centered. Unmovable. "No," he said. "They don't." The room went silent again. A thick, suffocating silence. The kind that tells you something irreversible just happened. Meghan stared at him. Jason stared back. And for the first time, she realized something she hadn't expected. Jason wasn't intimidated. He wasn't pliable. He wasn't going to surrender control. He wasn't Harry. He wasn't royal staff. He wasn't someone she could pressure with status. He was a director. And this was his set. Finally, Meghan stepped back. Not willingly. Not gracefully. Retreating like someone who planned to regroup and strike again later. She left the room without a goodbye. Without a nod. Without even pretending to collaborate. And the moment the door closed behind her, one of the writers whispered, "Oh, Jason. She's going to go after you for that." Jason didn't answer. Because deep down he already knew. Something dangerous had just begun. And he wasn't wrong. Because hours after that incident, the same night, Actually, Meghan sent a private message about him. A message she never thought Jason would see. A message that didn't just question his authority. It attacked his character. And when that message reached him, everything changed. But what exactly did Meghan say behind Jason's back? And who leaked it to him? Hollywood has a strange memory. It forgets birthdays. It forgets anniversaries. It forgets marriages and divorces, promises and apologies, favors and betrayals. But it never forgets behavior. And Meghan Markle's behavior, years of it, was suddenly circling back at the exact moment she needed fresh support. Which is ironic, isn't it? She walked into Amazon MGM believing she had a clean slate. A second chance. A Hollywood redemption arc waiting to be written. But Hollywood had other plans. Because the moment news leaked that Meghan was circling a new project, the past woke up. Directors whispered. Producers smirked. Writers raised eyebrows. Former co-stars said nothing, which said everything. And the crew who witnessed the set incident in Chapter 2, they assumed it was a one-off. A moment of ego. A misunderstanding. But what they didn't know was that Meghan was simply reverting to an old pattern, one Hollywood insiders recognized instantly. The same pattern that cost her opportunities before. The same pattern that left a trail of uncomfortable meetings and frustrated collaborators. The same pattern Jason Orley was now walking directly into without realizing he wasn't the first. He was just the latest. But the moment that truly ignited the fire? The moment that made Jason realize this wasn't just an isolated incident? It came in the form of a message. A private message. A message Meghan never thought he would see. Let's talk about that message. Because this is where the story stops being awkward and becomes personal. But before we read it, you need the full context. You need the history. You need the whispers that hung over the entire studio like invisible smog. Because the truth is this. Hollywood had warned Jason about Meghan long before he ever met her. Not directly, of course. Not in official meetings. No one in Hollywood is that reckless. No, Hollywood warns through silence. Through subtle pauses. Through the tone in someone's voice when a certain name comes up. Imagine this. Jason mentions at a dinner that he's taking a meeting with Meghan Markle. The table goes quiet for half a second. Someone sips their drink. Someone else raises their eyebrows. A third person says, "Oh, interesting." No one says why it's interesting. No one says what happened before. No one spills details. But the message is clear. Proceed with caution. And when Jason was prepping for their first studio meeting, one producer, someone he trusted, said casually, "She's intense." Intense. A vague word. A careful word. A Hollywood word. But packed with meaning. Jason brushed it off. He wasn't the type to judge someone based on rumors. He had worked with difficult personalities before. He had survived Hollywood politics, scheduling disasters, last-minute rewrites, actor meltdowns, studio pressure, all of it. He wasn't scared of intensity. But intensity wasn't what they meant. What they meant was control. Years earlier, Meghan had been part of a series of pitches with another studio. Back when she was still finding her footing in the post-royal world. Back when she wanted to step behind the camera instead of just in front of it. By the third meeting, insiders say she was rewriting pitches mid-conversation, correcting executives, refusing suggestions, contradicting story logic, and insisting projects shift tone to match her vision. One executive reportedly told a friend afterward, "She doesn't collaborate, she dominates." Another said, "If she's part of the project, she needs to be the center of it." And yet another, "We walked in to partner with her. We left feeling like we were being managed by her." These experiences shouldn't have mattered anymore. People change. Circumstances change. Time softens rough edges. But Hollywood never forgets behavior. Because behavior predicts risk. And risk? Studios avoid it like poison. But none of that mattered to Jason. Until the message arrived. It was late. Past midnight. Jason was reviewing notes with a producer in a quiet conference room when the email pinged. Not a forwarded message. Not an official studio update. A screenshot. From someone inside Meghan's inner circle. The subject line was simple. "Thought you should know." And inside was Meghan's private text about Jason. It wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't explosive. It was worse. It was calculating. Here's what she wrote. Word for word, according to the leak. "He's not strong enough to lead this. If we push, he'll fold. We can take over the direction if we act early. Let that sink in. Not strong enough. He'll fold. Take over the direction. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a creative suggestion. This was a strategy, a plan to undermine him, a plan to control the project, a plan to push him out of his own leadership role. Jason read the message 3 times, and each time, he felt a different emotion. First, confusion. He had barely worked with her. Why would she judge him so fast? Second, hurt. He was passionate about the project. He cared deeply. He was building something meaningful. Third, realization. This wasn't new behavior for her. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern Hollywood already knew. A pattern executives privately warned about. A pattern that sent quiet shivers through studios. But for Jason, the message didn't just reveal her strategy. It revealed her perception of him. Someone she could manipulate. Someone she could overpower. Someone she believed she could replace if she played her cards right. He closed the laptop, sat back, exhaled, because now it was personal. Now he understood why the whispers carried weight. Now he saw why Hollywood remembers everything. Meghan wasn't simply assertive. She wasn't simply involved. She wasn't simply passionate. She was opportunistic, and she believed she could steamroll him. But Jason wasn't a rookie. He wasn't inexperienced. He wasn't someone who would fold under pressure. He had made movies. He had directed stars. He had survived studio executives screaming over budgets at 3 a.m. He was strong enough. But something else happened that same week. Something that confirmed the pattern wasn't in Jason's head. A call from a director Jason admired. Someone who had worked with Meghan years earlier. It wasn't a gossip call. It wasn't a warning call. It was a courtesy call. The voice on the other end said, "Look, Jason, you're talented and you're smart. So take this however you want. But when it comes to Meghan, protect your project. Protect your team. Protect yourself." Jason asked a simple question. Why? There was a long pause. A deep, heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then the director replied, "Because she doesn't just want a seat at the table. She wants the table." That line haunted him. Because it matched the message he saw. It matched the set incident. It matched the way she rearranged storyboards. It matched the way she walked into every room as if she already owned it. And the more Jason tried to wrap his mind around it, the more he realized something. Meghan wasn't trying to join the project. She was trying to take it. But this chapter isn't about painting Meghan as a villain. It's about revealing the truth Hollywood has whispered for years. The truth no one ever says aloud. People don't suddenly change their behavior when the stakes rise. They amplify it. Meghan believed she had leverage. She believed she had influence. She believed studios needed her more than she needed them. So when she walked into Amazon MGM Studios, she didn't see a partnership. She saw an opportunity. And when she wrote that message about Jason, she wasn't venting. She was planning. But the story gets even deeper. Because there was another layer, another piece of Meghan's Hollywood past that resurfaced at the worst possible time. Something Jason didn't know then, but would soon learn. A moment years earlier when Meghan walked out on a major project at the 11th hour. Not because of creative differences, not because of scheduling conflicts, but because she didn't have complete control. And that incident, long buried, long forgotten, long buried under royal headlines, resurfaced at Amazon MGM. Someone at the studio remembered. Someone brought it up in a meeting. Someone warned. She did it before. She'll do it again. Suddenly Jason wasn't dealing with a simple email problem. He was dealing with a pattern Hollywood already recognized. A pattern Amazon MGM quietly feared. And as the whispers grew louder, as the leaked message circulated behind closed doors, Jason realized something painful. This wasn't just a project in danger. It was his reputation. Because if a project spirals, the director takes the hit. If an actor storms off, the director takes the hit. If a collaboration collapses, the director takes the hit. Hollywood doesn't blame celebrity behavior. It blames the filmmakers who couldn't manage it. And Jason wasn't about to let Meghan's strategy destroy everything he built. But he wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because something else happened. Something that flipped everything upside down. A new whisper. A new rumor. A new revelation. Someone at Amazon MGM heard Meghan making a statement so bold, so reckless, so damaging, that when it reached Jason's ears, it changed his entire perception of her. And it didn't come from a message. It didn't come from a meeting. It didn't come from a misunderstanding. It came from a conversation. A private one. The kind that wasn't supposed to reach him. But it did. And when he heard what she said, the words she used, the intentions behind them, Jason realized he wasn't dealing with ambition. He was dealing with betrayal. And that betrayal led directly to the secret meeting in Burbank. The meeting that would blow this entire partnership apart. But what exactly did Meghan say? And who exposed her? The door wasn't supposed to close that loudly. But it did, and the sound lingered like a warning. Because everyone in the room knew the meeting that was about to unfold wasn't just another studio conversation. It wasn't a pitch. It wasn't a brainstorm. It wasn't a creative catch-up. It was damage control. And it was all because of Meghan Markle. The sign on the door read, "Private, Executive Session." Not unusual, not alarming, except for one detail. Meghan wasn't invited. And when Meghan isn't invited to something she believes she should be part of, she notices. But the people inside that room had already reached that uncomfortable, dangerous stage where they weren't asking how to include her. They were asking how to protect the project from her. The meeting took place in Burbank, in a quiet, glass-walled conference room on the 6th floor of the Amazon MGM building, a floor typically reserved for high-level decision-making, strategic planning, and studio emergencies. This meeting fell into the third category. Jason sat at the far end of the polished wood table, hands clasped, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Across from him were 3 Amazon MGM executives, 2 producers, and the head of project development, all leaning in with that tense posture people have when they know a crisis is coming, but no one wants to be the first to say it. A pitcher of water sat untouched. Nobody felt like drinking. Finally, one of the executives exhaled and said the line that would set the tone for the entire conversation. "We need to talk about Meghan." Jason didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew where things were headed. But before we dive into what happened inside that room, before we unpack the confrontation, the revelations, the fallout, we need to go back 24 hours. Because something happened the day before. Something no one expected. Something that pushed the executives to call this secret meeting. And it began with a confidential phone call. Imagine this. Jason is in his office, reviewing notes, going through revisions, trying to focus, trying to breathe after the chaos on set. Then his phone buzzes. An unknown number. Normal day, normal moment. But the voice on the other end? Not normal. It belonged to someone from Meghan's camp. Not her agent. Not her publicist. Not anyone officially tied to Amazon MGM's negotiations. This was someone unofficial, someone who spoke with far too much confidence. And their message? Direct, pushy, threatening. They said, if Jason can't get in line, Meghan will have to escalate things. Escalate. What does escalate mean? Go to the press? Manipulate the narrative? Make Jason look incompetent? Threaten to walk away from a project she wasn't even attached to? Jason didn't know. But the tone made one thing clear. This wasn't about collaboration. This was a warning, a message, a declaration that Meghan believed she held the power and everyone else needed to get out of her way. Jason didn't respond to the threat. He simply ended the call and walked directly to the 6th floor. That's how the meeting in Burbank was born. He wasn't going to let his name get dragged into a celebrity power play. Not quietly, not politely, not while he was responsible for a multi-million-dollar project. So when the executives said, "We need to talk about Meghan," his silence wasn't hesitation. It was restraint. One executive leaned forward. "Look," she said, "we all appreciate Meghan's ambition. But this isn't sustainable. She's creating confusion. She's overstepping. She's sending messages to staff who don't report to her. She's rearranging creative direction without approval." Another executive cut in. "And she's undermining you, Jason." That private message was out of line. A producer added, "This could derail everything." Everyone nodded. Everyone except Jason. He finally asked a quiet but powerful question. Why does she think she already has authority? The room went still. Because that was the question no one had an answer to. Had someone told her something? Had she misinterpreted a casual conversation? Was this part of a larger strategy? Or was this simply Meghan being Meghan? Then came the bombshell. One of the executives hesitated, then said, "There's something else. Something we didn't know until this morning." Jason stiffened. The executive continued. "Yesterday, Meghan spoke to a staff member, and she told them the project was hers now. Hers now. Not collaborative. Not shared. Not in negotiation. Hers." The staff member told their supervisor. The supervisor told their department head. The department head told the executive. And now the words were sitting in the middle of the conference room like a ticking time bomb. But what made the executives panic wasn't the phrase itself. It was what Meghan said next. She told them you were stepping aside. Jason froze. Stepping aside? He hadn't stepped aside. He hadn't even considered it. He was the director. He was leading development. He was the one the studio hired. He asked slowly, "Did she say why I was stepping aside?" The executive nodded. "She told them you weren't strong enough to handle the project's demands." The words felt painfully familiar. Not strong enough. The exact phrase from the private text Meghan never intended him to see. At this point, Hollywood history wasn't just whispering around him. It was screaming. Meghan had done this before. Pushing out collaborators, claiming authority she didn't have, shifting narratives to make herself the leader on projects she wasn't even approved for. But hearing it again, now in the present, now affecting him rather than some unnamed director from years ago, that was different. That was personal. The meeting took a turn. One producer slammed their pen on the table in frustration. "This isn't just ego. This is sabotage." Another chimed in. "She's creating an environment where no one knows who's in charge." The room buzzed with building tension. Then an executive said, "She's doing something else too, and you need to hear it." Jason leaned forward. "This morning," the executive continued, "she contacted 2 departments and requested materials for a concept pitch. A pitch that wasn't approved." "What kind of pitch?" Jason asked. "A pitch that repositions her as the lead creative." The room held its breath. Because this wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't ambition. It was a takeover attempt. An undeniable power grab. And Jason felt something shift inside him. The feeling you get when a line has been crossed so thoroughly, you know there's no going back. But the meeting wasn't over. Not even close. Because just when everyone thought they'd covered every issue, another revelation landed like a meteor. A producer pulled out a folder. Not digital. Not emailed. A physical folder. "This," she said quietly, "was sent anonymously." Jason took it. Opened it. Inside were screenshots. More messages. More comments. More private opinions Meghan had shared with her team, all dismissing Jason, mocking his leadership style, and outlining ways to bypass him. One line from Meghan's communication stood out. "He's too soft. We can reshape this project if we guide him firmly." Soft. Weak. Foldable. Meghan wasn't talking about collaboration. She wasn't talking about partnership. She wasn't talking about creative synergy. She was talking about controlling him, using him, overriding him. Jason let the pages fall onto the table. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His silence was its own answer. The executives exchanged looks. Nods. Mutual understanding. Then the head of development said what everyone else was too afraid to say aloud. "We can't give her this power. If she's acting like this now, imagine what happens if we move forward." The room murmured in agreement. Then came the question that had been hovering beneath every word spoken. "What do we do?" Jason looked up, and in a steady voice that held no anger, just clarity, he said, "We need to set boundaries." Boundaries. But these weren't simple boundaries. These were consequences. Consequences that would ultimately lead to Meghan being removed entirely. The executives agreed, reluctantly at first, but firmly by the end. They would call Meghan. Explain the chain of command. Communicate that Jason was the director. Clarify that unauthorized directives had to stop. But this wasn't the most important decision. The most important decision came next. They agreed to restrict her access. No more wandering onto sets. No more communicating with staff. No more sending directives. No more rearranging storyboards. No more manipulation. Jason didn't ask for these measures. But he didn't oppose them either. Because deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't just about protecting the project. It was about protecting the people working on it. The meeting ended quietly. The pitcher of water still untouched. The folder still sitting in the center of the table. Jason gathered his things and stepped out of the room. But right as the door closed behind him, something happened. Meghan walked out of the elevator, holding a tablet, smiling, ready to join a meeting she thought she'd been invited to. She didn't realize she wasn't. She didn't realize the meeting she wanted to be part of had already happened. She didn't realize decisions had already been made. Jason froze. She froze. Their eyes met in the hallway, and she said something that made Jason's heart sink. "Oh good, you're here. I was told we needed to go over next steps together. Next steps. Together. And that's when Jason realized the situation was worse than he imagined. Because someone in the building, was feeding Meghan false information. But who? And why? And more importantly, what exactly had they told her? The answer would come soon. Painfully soon. And it would reveal the true reason Meghan believed she was untouchable at Amazon MGM. But the fallout from that hallway encounter? It would be explosive. And it would lead to the decision that would change everything. Meghan's contract disappearing overnight. That it happened faster than anyone expected. One moment, Meghan Markle believed she was on the verge of locking down a powerful Hollywood comeback. The next, her name was quietly removed from the internal project tracker, deleted as if she had never been considered at all. No warning, no explanation, no formal announcement. Just gone, like she had never existed in the building. But let's rewind to the exact moment the unraveling began. Because it didn't start with a meeting. It didn't start with a decision. It didn't even start with Jason Orley. It started with Meghan's reaction in the hallway. The reaction she had after seeing Jason step out of that private Burbank conference room. The room she believed she was supposed to be in. She smiled. A confident, knowing smile. A smile that only someone absolutely certain of their status would wear. "Oh good," she said. "We need to go over next steps together." Together. That word again. The word that had rapidly become a red flag. Jason didn't correct her on the spot. Not because he was intimidated, and not because he believed she deserved the illusion she was holding on to, but because something in her tone made him pause. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't excitement. It was certainty. Certainty that came from somewhere. Certainty that terrified him more than any leaked message. Because Meghan wasn't guessing. She wasn't assuming. She wasn't hoping. She believed, deeply believed, that she was already cemented into the project. So who told her that? Who was feeding her this narrative? Who was emboldening her to act like she owned a room she wasn't even invited into? Jason's silence told Meghan everything she assumed was true. She smiled wider. "I'll meet you in the smaller conference room," she said. "We'll go over adjustments before I speak with Tom and Marissa." Tom and Marissa. Two senior executives. Executives she thought she had access to. Executives she believed she would be speaking to after revising the project. Executives who, at that exact moment, were upstairs discussing how to distance the studio from her entirely. Jason didn't answer. And that silence, his silence, did something Meghan didn't expect. It infuriated her. She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle refusing to solve itself. Then she dropped a line that made Jason's stomach twist. "You're not going to play difficult, are you?" Difficult. As in resisting her takeover. As in refusing to give her control. As in not bending to her narrative. Jason simply walked past her. No confrontation. No argument. He wasn't going to get pulled into her script. But Meghan wasn't done. She pivoted sharply. "You need to coordinate with my rep," she called out, voice tightening. "She'll send my version of the outline tonight." Jason stopped walking. My version. Not a suggestion. Not a collaboration. Not a draft for discussion. Her version. A rewrite of a project she did not own, was not contracted for, and had not been granted authority over. Jason turned slowly. "Meghan," he said, calm but firm, "there is no your version. We don't work that way." Her expression changed instantly. The smile evaporated. The confidence cracked. A flicker of anger surfaced, sharp, hot, unfiltered. She stepped closer. "You should be careful," she said quietly. "People are watching." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A reminder that she believed she held influence. A reminder she thought she had people on her side. A reminder she didn't think she needed approval, only opportunity. Jason didn't respond. He turned and walked away. And that walk, those silent, steady steps down the hallway, was the moment everything shifted. Because Meghan realized something. Jason wasn't intimidated. He wasn't uncertain. He wasn't folding. He was done. And Meghan Markle doesn't handle done well. She doesn't let go. She doesn't back down. She escalates. And she did, immediately. Within an hour, Meghan had contacted 3 different people inside the studio. A producer who wasn't even assigned to the project. An assistant who adored her. A development analyst who once had lunch with her team. And she told all 3 the same thing. "We're moving forward. I'll need updated materials by morning." Except they weren't moving forward. Behind closed doors, the executives had already agreed to put the brakes on everything associated with her. But they wanted to do it quietly. They didn't want a public fallout. They didn't want Meghan running to the press. They didn't want drama. So they decided to let her reveal herself. The studio didn't call Meghan that night. They didn't schedule a meeting. They didn't send a warning. They didn't issue a statement. They simply left everything exactly as it was. Except for one small but significant change. They froze her file. In internal systems, every potential collaborator has a digital file tracking movement. Initial inquiry, early discussions, creative notes, contract status, negotiation phases. Meghan's file had been sitting at pending review until that night, when someone in the legal department, following executive instruction, clicked one button. Remove from pipeline. The moment that button was pressed, Meghan's contract, still in draft form, still incomplete, still under consideration, disappeared from the system. Gone. No digital trace. No placeholder. No scheduled follow-ups. No pending meetings. It was as if she had never been considered. The next morning, Meghan woke up to a surprise. Her inbox was empty. No meeting invites. No follow-up messages. No scheduling emails. Nothing from Amazon MGM. But she didn't notice immediately. She was too busy sending out directives. At 9:17 a.m., she emailed a staffer asking for updated character breakdowns. At 9:42 a.m., she messaged a producer about marketing possibilities. At 10:03 a.m., she requested access to internal mood boards. At 10:17 a.m., she asked an assistant to prepare introductions for her upcoming meeting with executives. Except, there was no meeting. Not anymore. Not ever again. And by 11:30 a.m., the silence became impossible to ignore. No one was responding. No one was acknowledging. No one was confirming. Because the executives had told their departments something simple. Pause all communication with Meghan until further notice. Meghan knew something was off around 1 p.m. when she walked into the studio lobby. The receptionist didn't greet her with enthusiasm today. Instead, she offered a polite but cautious smile. Meghan asked, "Which room are they in?" And the receptionist froze. No one had told Meghan her meeting was canceled. No one had told the receptionist, either. So she checked the system. Her eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, "but I don't see a meeting scheduled." Meghan laughed lightly. "Oh, that's impossible. Check again." The receptionist checked again. Still nothing. Meghan's smile tightened. "I'm meeting with Tom and Marissa." "Where are they?" The receptionist tried to stay professional. "I'm not showing them in the building right now." Because they weren't. The executives had intentionally worked off-site that day. They didn't want a confrontation. They didn't want drama in the hallways. They didn't want a scene. But Meghan didn't know that. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, and called her assistant. "Why is everything missing from the system?" she demanded. Her assistant hesitated. I don't know. But something strange is happening. I checked your project file this morning, and what?" Meghan pressed. "It's gone." Silence. A long, cold, dangerous silence. "What do you mean gone?" "I mean, deleted. Like it never existed." Meghan walked out of the lobby. Fast. Focused. Tight steps. Controlled panic. Because she knew exactly what it meant when a project disappears without explanation. Someone made a decision. Someone important. And someone had acted behind her back. She called the producer she had been messaging. Voicemail. She called the development analyst. Voicemail. She called the assistant she had instructed earlier. Voicemail. 3 unanswered calls in a row. That wasn't coincidence.